Campbell noted, Senators, good evening. First, I want to bring the conversation back home. You know from your travels, you don't need to look at the polls or anything else, that the economy is by far now the dominant issue that voters want to hear about from the candidates. And for some, that's a question about what should we do about an economy that is at the edge or perhaps in the early stages of a recession. For some, it's more focused. Maybe it's, will you raise the minimum wage? Maybe it is about trade deals that they think leave them on the raw end, as you mentioned in your opening statement, Senator Obama. But when we ask Democrats, how are these two candidates different, many of them say they don't know. So, Senator Obama, beginning with you, tell us as specifically as you can, how would a President Obama be different than a President Clinton in managing the nation's economy?
Well, first of all, let me emphasize the point that you just made, which is you don't need an economist or the Federal Reserve to tell the American people that the economy is in trouble, because they've been experiencing it for years now. Everywhere you go, you meet people who are working harder for less. Wages and incomes have flatlined. People are seeing escalating costs of everything from health care to gas at the pump. And so people have been struggling for a long time, and in some communities, they have been struggling for decades now. So this has to be a priority of the next president. Now, what I've said is that we have to restore a sense of fairness and balance to our economy. And that means a couple of things. Number one, with our tax code, we've got to stop giving tax breaks to companies that are shipping jobs overseas and invest those tax breaks in companies that are investing here in the United States of America. We have to end the Bush tax cuts to the wealthy and to provide tax breaks to middle-class Americans and working Americans who need them. So I've said that if you are making $75,000 a year or less, I want to give a offset to your payroll tax that will mean $1,000 extra in the pockets of ordinary Americans. Senior citizens making less than $50,000, you shouldn't have to pay income tax on your Social Security. We pay for these by closing tax loopholes and tax havens that are being manipulated. On our trade deals, I think it is absolutely critical that we engage in trade, but it has to be viewed not just through the lens of Wall Street, but also Main Street, which means we've got strong labor standards and strong environmental standards and safety standards, so we don't have toys being shipped in the United States with lead paint on them. Now, these are all issues that I've talked about repeatedly, and I think there are also opportunities in our economy around creating a green economy. We send $1 billion to foreign countries every day because of our addiction to foreign oil. And for us to move rapidly to cap greenhouse gases, generate billions of dollars that we can reinvest in solar and wind and biodiesel, that can put people back to work. So now I don't want to take too much time, and I'm sure we'll be able to spend more time discussing this. Senator Clinton and I think, both agree on many of these issues. And I think it's a credit to the Democratic Party as a whole that the other candidates who were involved earlier on agreed with us on many of these issues. I think that there is a real solid agenda for moving change forward in the next presidency. The question people are going to have to ask is, how do we get it done? And it is my strong belief that the changes are only going to come about if we're able to form a working coalition for change, because people who are benefiting from the current tax code are going to resist. The special interests and lobbyists are going to resist. And I think it has to be a priority for whoever the next president is to be able to overcome the dominance of the special interests in Washington to bring about the kinds of economic changes that I'm talking about. And that's an area where Senator Clinton and I may have a slight difference, but I'm happy to let her speak first and then can pick up on anything that's been left out.
Let's give Senator Clinton that opportunity. And as you have campaigned, Senator, on this issue and others, but specifically on this issue, you have said, I am ready on day one to take charge of the economy. The clear implication, since you have one opponent at the moment, is that you're ready, he's not. What would you do differently on day one than a President Obama would when it comes to managing the nation's economy?
Well, I would agree with a lot that Senator Obama just said, because it is the Democratic agenda. We are going to rid the tax code of these loopholes and giveaways. We're going to stop giving a penny of your money to anybody who ships a job out of Texas, Ohio, or anywhere else to another country. We're certainly going to begin to get the tax code to reflect what the needs of middle-class families are, so we can rebuild a strong and prosperous middle class. You know, the wealthy and the well-connected have had a president for the last 7 years, and I think it's time that the rest of America had a president to work for you every single day. We will also have a different approach toward trade. We're going to start having trade agreements that not only have strong environmental and labor standards, but I want to have a trade timeout. We're going to look and see what's working and what's not working, and I'd like to have a trade prosecutor to actually enforce the trade agreements that we have before we enter into any others. We're also going to put much tougher standards in place so that people cannot import toys with lead paint, contaminated pet food, contaminated drugs into our market. We're going to have a much more vigorous enforcement of safety standards. Now, in addition, there are steps I would take immediately. One is on this foreclosure crisis. I have been saying for nearly a year we had to crack down on the abusive practices of the lenders. But we also need a moratorium on home foreclosures. Everywhere I go, I meet people who either have been or are about to lose their home. 85,000 homes in foreclosure in Texas, 90,000 in Ohio. I've met the families, the hairdresser, the single mom who's going to lose her home, the postal worker who got really hoodwinked into an agreement that wasn't fair to him. So I would put a moratorium for 90 days to give us time to work out a way for people to stay in their homes, and I would freeze interest rates for 5 years, because these adjustable rate mortgages, if they keep going up, millions of Americans are going to be homeless, and vacant homes will be across the neighborhoods of Texas and America. Now, in addition, there are 3 ways we need to jumpstart the economy. Clean, green jobs. I've been promoting this. I wanted it to be part of the stimulus package. I thought a $5 billion investment in clean, green jobs would put hundreds of thousands of Americans to work, helping to create our future. We also need to invest in our infrastructure. We don't have enough roads to take care of the congestion. We have crumbling bridges and tunnels. We need to rebuild America, and that will also put people to work. And finally, we need to end George Bush's war on science, which has been waged against scientists and researchers.
Thank you, Senator. And we've got a lot of ground to cover, so I want to switch
about
gears.
How we fund the future. We've got to get back to being the innovation nation. Think of everything that goes on at this great university to create the new economy and new jobs.
All right, Senator Clinton, thank you very much.